is beating that dead horse. Get it!
It's remarkable how fast one's opinion of a person can change. Okay, so obviously this week I'm trying out another one of those response video thingies. This time on a different kind of subject than what I've covered before. And yes, I do know full well that a ton of other content creators have already made effectively this exact same video. That's what that very original and not at all overused joke at the beginning of this video was meant to lampshade. Like seriously, Jar Media made a video about this. Go watch theirs instead of mine. It's way better. But I did plan to make this video back before I saw that those videos had been made, so I'm still making it. And I do feel like I have my own personal kind of spin to bring to this, because even though I haven't actually seen The Wall, I have heard most of the songs from it. And I have a very personal history with the Nostalgia Critic and his content. And I know that I'm not unique in that, but I feel like talking about it, so I'm going to talk about it. Which does mean that, yes, this isn't going to be entirely a critique of the Nostalgia Critic review of The Wall. It's also going to be a critique of the Nostalgia Critic himself. For those who are somehow on the internet and yet don't know, the Nostalgia Critic is a character played by Doug Walker. He is a character in the same vein as characters such as the Angry Video Game Nerd, who is far superior and you should be watching his stuff, and not the Nostalgia Critics probably. And all of the content for the Nostalgia Critic, or at least the vast majority of it, is written by Doug Walker and his brother Rob. And even though there are a bunch of other characters who are very much like the Nostalgia Critic character, even some that came first, I remind you of the Angry Video Game Nerd, the Nostalgia Critic is the first such persona in this style that I ever came across and started to follow in any real sort of way. And also, for those who are on the internet and somehow don't know this, the Nostalgia Critic and his company, ChannelAwesome.com, recently came under fire when almost all of the content creators from that website, who up until that point shared a combined continuity with one another in terms of what happened in their reviews, left the site and posted a document online outlining a whole bunch of just absolutely terrible stuff perpetrated by many people in the company. And while Doug himself wasn't really named in that document, he's like co-founder of the frickin' company. So the assumption is he had to have known about it. And their response to it was just absolutely terrible. And they have continued to respond to it terribly ever since. That's what that whole hashtag change the channel thing that was circulating for a while was about. While the Nostalgia Critic is the first of those characters that I started following, I have followed several others since then and the personalities behind them. And I find most of them to be obviously reputable. And so between that and how poorly the response to the document was handled, I decided pretty much immediately to stop visiting ChannelAwesome.com and to move away from the Nostalgia Critic's content. And yet I can't, not entirely. I still find myself checking his videos out on Wednesdays when they're uploaded to YouTube. They usually go up first on his actual site on Tuesday. His stuff still gets recommended to me on YouTube all the frickin' time, so it's not like I have to be subscribed to see it. He's big enough that his stuff gets promoted by the algorithm just by default. And while most of the time I don't end up watching his videos, when I saw that he had made a review of The Wall and that it was 40 minutes long, I had to check it out. I just couldn't help it. And again, I haven't seen the movie, and yet even though I haven't seen the movie, watching that video, it was obvious that he just didn't get it. That either Doug or his brother or both of them just didn't get the movie in the first place. Because for those who don't know, The Wall, the movie, is effectively the Pink Floyd album The Wall, with a couple extra songs thrown in, with images put to it. It's like one really long, protracted, very good, from what I understand, music video. Like, I definitely need to go watch it now. I still haven't yet, because I still wanted my reaction to this review to be as fresh and honest as possible, but I am going to have to go watch it now. It seems really interesting. But the point is, if you heard any of the music from that album, and you understood what that music was trying to convey in the first place, then you have at least some idea of what some of the stuff in this movie's about. And I have, and I did, and so I do. And it's so freaking obvious that whoever wrote that particular review of the Nostalgia Critics just didn't. Let's use the segment where the Nostalgia Critic criticizes the segment of the movie which is set to "We Don't Need No Education" as an example, because that's probably my favorite song of the bunch that I know are in the movie. But even before we can get into that, I have to describe what shape this review took. It's framed like this dude from Slipknot, I think, whose name I cannot remember, even though I just looked it up a little while ago, sitting down to watch the Nostalgia Critic's traditional style review of the movie The Wall, and then a bunch of Wall movie-esque stuff happens to him. And the Nostalgia Critic and Doug Walker, they're effectively the same person at this point from what I understand, sings a bunch of songs that are parody songs of the songs in the movie. And he sings them badly. Like, I don't want to harp on the guy for not being the greatest singer, but he has sang songs before that I thought were pretty good. I didn't find any of the songs in this review enjoyable at all. But that is effectively it. That's effectively the review. He sings songs, bad songs, which contain sort of his criticisms of the movie, but at the same time, they're very limited in what they can actually say, because they have to be parodies of the songs in the movie itself. And like, all of that would be well and good. It would be a novel and interesting thing if he actually understood what he was talking about, because "We Don't Need No Education" is not, as he asserts in his review, a song where the singer is bitching about the fact that they didn't like school.
This is pandering like hell. Remember that one teacher who seemed cool? He wasn't! He was all part of the plan! Hey! Who cares? All this bitching's hell!
It's like, not even that nuanced. It's very obviously attempting to raise real questions regarding the efficacy of... Pink Floyd was British, right? So I guess the British education system, but it can apply to the American one too. So I'm just going to talk about the American education system because that's what I know. It raises questions as to the efficacy of that system and whether or not it isn't better to avoid it. If it's not going to change, if it isn't better to avoid it, because it does crush kids' creativity and strip them of their individuality in very profound ways sometimes. So the song is asking, is it worth it to go through all of that to become a little bit smarter by the end? Or if you shouldn't avoid it and retain more of who you actually are. But the Nostalgia Critic sings for like, I don't know, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes straight about how annoying it is that someone would complain about school in song form. I don't think he realizes how ironic it is that he's also complaining in song form while doing that. And what's worse is that, from what I understand, he actually had these songs like professionally mixed and produced. Like, this isn't something that he just put together in-house. He actually brought professionals in to handle this. And it's such a waste. It's such wasted talent. Because, like, if the songs were good, that'd be one thing. If they were saying something meaningful, that would be one thing. But neither one is true. Because, I mean, I don't remember every single song in the review. It was kind of a slog to get through sometimes. But what I do remember, I don't remember any of them making a decent point. Even once. They're longer than they need to be, and they're repetitive, and they hardly say anything, and when they do say something, that something is wrong. Like, objectively wrong. It's not even a matter of taste or opinion. He's just wrong about what he's talking about. he doesn't get the movie, and it doesn't even seem like he tried. It seems like he wanted to complain about it. He had this idea in his head, because apparently he has been thinking about this review for a very long time. Doug is who I'm talking about. He had this idea in his head to complain about this movie that he thinks is too wordy and too long-winded and overrated, and that he just didn't care to change his mind or to even look into whether or not he might be misinterpreting things. And that, of course, brings us back to the whole change the channel thing, because one of the major criticisms of Doug and his character in that document, and a criticism of him that I've seen popping up more and more since the document came out, is that he's very full of himself. That he's very prideful and arrogant. He considers himself to be the most important person in the room, and he certainly considered himself to be the most important person on the Channel Awesome site. And I guess now he is, since it's only him and like 2 other people. But like, yeah, seeing his hot takes on the music in the wall, that tracks. Because he's just so frustratingly sure that he's right, and that he's not just right, but he's more right than all of the people who think that this movie is good. Like, you can hear it in the music as he's singing it. It's just so condescending. And I don't know what it is about being that condescending in song form that really hammers it home to me, because the Nostalgia Critic character has always been like that. But I guess it always felt like it was coming from the character. In musical form, it sounds like it's coming from Doug himself, and probably also Rob a little bit too. There are some things in this review, though, that I will defend that I think work pretty well. There's a sequence toward the end where some fantastically animated, if I'm not mistaken, another YouTuber animated these for him, but these fantastically animated monster creatures come in basically out of nowhere and do a bunch of cool stuff. And I've heard people criticizing the fact that they come out of nowhere because it doesn't really come from anything. There's no logical reason for that to be there at that point in the video. I've also heard people criticizing the fact that his actual review of the movie, the part where he actually gives his opinions outright, is like 6 seconds long or something, and it's just him saying, I thought the movie was actually okay. And I've heard people criticize that the guy from Slipknot, whose name I still do not remember, I should have looked it up, he was only used in this movie to sit around or walk around silently, and then to sing the SpongeBob theme out of nowhere at the end for no discernible reason. And those 3 things together, I think they actually work deceptively well if you look at the review from the perspective that Doug thinks that he's right about the movie. Because his takeaway from the wall seems to be that it has visuals which don't actually tie back to the narrative that it's attempting to convey, that it says a lot without saying anything, and that there's a lot of nonsensical components that don't have any lead up to them. And if you take that monster scene and the SpongeBob scene and the very, very brief summation of Doug's thoughts on the movie as representative of that, I actually think they work super well to convey his thoughts without him having to spell them out. But the fact of the matter is, this review is so bad. It's so very, very bad. Like, you can argue whether or not Doug's videos are of any good quality anyway. Like, his special effects haven't really improved since, like, 2012 or something, and he doesn't really seem concerned with improving them, and his humor hasn't really evolved in something like a decade, and a lot of his experimental stuff doesn't land as hard as he thinks it does. But despite all of those very valid criticisms of his content, especially his modern content, I think I can say pretty objectively that this is the worst video he's ever made. Because at the very least, most of the time he sounds like he has at least some idea of what he's talking about. But here, even I, someone who hasn't even seen the movie, in question can tell that he just doesn't. Like, I actually just went and checked, and on channelawesome.com right now is his next review, the first of his Nostalgia-ween thing that he does every October, and I watched a little bit of it. It's a review of Hannibal, and it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Like, it's been years since I've seen that, but his criticisms, yeah, they make sense. And it can't be that he didn't care about this stupid The Wall review, because like I said, he's apparently been working on this for a really long time. And like, you can tell that he thought he had come up with something really cool, an idea that was really cool, that everybody was just gonna love when he started putting this thing together, because he even made all the songs from it, including some songs that didn't even make it into the review, available for sale. Which is just stupid, because these songs are absolutely meaningless without the context of the review itself. But he wouldn't have done that if he hadn't at some point thought that this was a really good idea. So it can't be that he didn't care about it. It can't be that he was just trying to throw something together, or that he was just being experimental again. He thought this was a home run, and he instead struck out. Which implies an entirely different type of not caring. The type of not caring that involves him not caring that he might be wrong. That involves him not caring that his fans might not appreciate something, that shits on a really popular movie with a bunch of really popular songs in it for no good reason except to apparently be edgy enough to sell his dumb parody songs after the fact. And that, I think, is a profoundly worse kind of not caring, because a YouTuber or a content creator of any kind who doesn't care in the I'm over this, I don't care kind of way, can continue to drone on and make the same kind of content that they've always made and make it successfully. But somebody who doesn't care about the kind of feedback they might get, who doesn't care that their opinions might be total garbage, that's the kind of person whose entire career is going to one day collapse around them. I guess it's about time I actually told you the story of why I care about this. A few years ago, I'm not going to say specifically when, it was before I got my channel started though, I was very, very depressed. I'm not depressed now, but I was very, very depressed. I was living on my own for the first time, and I wasn't doing well. My first, big deal kind of job ended abruptly, despite the fact that I was guaranteed that it would last longer than it actually did. I was having trouble finding another one. I was relying on the goodwill of friends and family just to pay rent, and I was this close to just killing myself. And that's when I'll say I rediscovered it, because I had watched some Nostalgia Critic stuff in the past, but that's when I rediscovered the Nostalgia Critic stuff. The old stuff specifically, back before he got really experimental with how he conducted his reviews. And I know this is going to sound super freaking cliche, but despite the fact that I have no idea what exactly it was about those videos that really hit me that hard, they made me happy. They were the only thing for a while that made me happy. They kept me going until I was strong enough to pull myself out of that particular rough spot. And I know that because of that, I think of Doug as if he's a part of my life. Even though I know that's not the case, I do think of, I won't say Doug himself, but the character that he plays as being like an actual, tangible part of my life. And it was really hard letting that go when I learned about all the behind-the-scenes stuff that spurred the Change the Channel movement. I think the only other times in recent memory that I felt that dead inside was when Leonard Nimoy died and then Stan Lee died. Because, at least as far as I was concerned, that was the day that the Nostalgia Critic died. What keeps uploading content now is, to me at least, more like the Nostalgia Critic's corpse propped up Weekend at Bernie's style behind his trademark table against his trademark backdrop wall. And I'm not going to say that it caused some sort of crisis, that I backslid into deep depression again, because I didn't. I was on stable enough footing at that point that I was able to carry on, mostly unimpeded with my day-to-day stuff, but it was still rough. It was still rough rationalizing that, internalizing that. But even though I have internalized it, even though I have made peace with the truth and the fact that I would not call myself a Nostalgia Critic fan anymore, I feel like the only way that I could possibly round out this response, review, whatever it is by appealing to Doug and Rob, and I guess the entire Nostalgia Critic team, and asking them to just really think about the kind of people they are and the kind of people they want to be. Because I know I'm not the only person who feels this, not exactly the same way, but a similar way about this character. I know I'm not the only person to be let down by these people, and I really do feel like the Nostalgia Critic and his content can be a force for good, like legitimately, not just in that they tack advertisements for charities at the end of their videos now. I guess what I'm asking them to do is to take everyone's advice and change for the better, because I'd really like to be able to call myself a fan of theirs again. That's enough sentimental crap though. This video is bad. It's really bad. I know I'm probably gonna get some angry Nostalgia Critic fans on this video now telling me how wrong I am, but I'm not. You guys are, sorry. Frankly, I welcome them. That's more engagement on my video, right? As per usual, I'd like to know, what did you think of Nostalgia Critic's review of The Wall, if you've seen it for some reason? And I guess while you're at it, what's your opinion of the Nostalgia Critic himself and the Change the Channel movement and all that jazz? Because, you know, I love it when my comment section gets turned into a dumpster fire. Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.